Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Erekose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello everybody, how you doing? Okay, so we're here today with another little upload, a little premiere for everybody. We're going to be talking with another Australian supporter who I spoke to while I was down under. And he goes by the name of Hugh Frazier. It was a real pleasure to meet Hugh. He came over to meet us at the Palisades pub. That was it was like the pub that was literally like 10 yards from our front door of where we were staying. Which had Mr. Capaldi in hog heaven, personally. But if you ask me anyway. Anyway, no. But he came down there and met us at the pub. We said we'd be there for a few hours before we had to, I think this was right before we had to leave for Melbourne. So we had a couple hours free, and so we announced on Twitter and stuff that we would be hanging out at the Palisades pub and gave, put the address and that thing, whatever. So Hugh, got in touch and said, yeah, I'm going to come down and meet you and everything. So we were in there having a few beers. Carol Ann Fitzgerald showed up. Very nice to meet Carol Ann Fitzgerald. And I did talk to Carol Ann and asked her if she would be interested in doing a video and that sort of thing. And she ended up having to leave before we could do one right there. So I'm going to do my best to have her on live here soon and talk to her, chat with her a little bit about the case and about things. Just to be able to speak to another Australian supporter. Carol Ann's got a real good grip of the case, and she's done research, and she's not just somebody who just watched the documentaries essentially. So it'll be very interesting to talk to her, and she has a little bit of a background in law enforcement, so over in Australia. Actually, but a little bit of background in law enforcement, so that should make all of these things should make it kind of interesting to have a chat with Carol Ann. So today we're going to be talking with Hugh Frazier, and I tell you what, I like Hugh a lot. Me and Paul both liked Hugh. He just has a real kind of just a common sense approach, common sense thinking, and he has a few interesting ideas that you'll see here in the interview that he'll express. And we really liked Hugh. We thought he was great, and it was a pleasure to getting to meet so many people. But he actually came out to meet us and everything. It was really great. It was a good time. It was just fun having this interview, just chatting with him. Him and I and Paul are there. You're not going to see Paul on camera, folks, so don't get shocked when you hear Paul come into the audio. He's just sitting kind of off to the side of the camera a little bit because there wasn't really room for all three of us to sit comfortably on the little couch there that was in this little common living area that we had in this place. Anyway, so you won't see Paul, but he's there and you'll hear him at a certain point. So but it was great. It was a great conversation. Great to talk to Hugh. And one other thing that I'm going to talk about after this clip is done, but I'm going to kind of preface it a little bit right now. At the beginning of this clip, you hear Hugh talking about his son. I asked Hugh about his son because, well, Hugh and I talked before this. Anyway, so I asked him about his son, and you find out that he says that he thinks his son kind of told him about making a murderer and Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey or whatever to kind of bait him. And I take that to mean that his son has a maybe a less than flattering attitude about Stephen and or Brendan. So I'm actually very curious to talk to his son. Number one, to see, to kind of shake out, what his thoughts are. And I was bummed that he didn't bring him. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the end. And so let's go ahead and go to the clip now. Okay, hello everybody. As you know, here in Australia, getting the chance to talk to another supporter of Stephen and Brendan. This is Hugh Frazier. Showed up here at the pub today to have a little chat with us. Carol Ann Fitzgerald was also here, but she had to run out. Couldn't do an interview with me today, unfortunately. and whatever it is. So Hugh showed up here. He has an interest in the case, and I think I'll start with asking you how you got interested in the case, because I think it's an interesting way you got interested. I always like to hear people's stories of how they got into the case.
Well, my son is a psychologist. He's the guy who said, "Take a look at this."
Right. And what's what caught his interest? What got him to suggest it to you?
I'd really just think it was to bait me, because he knows I'm.
Because he knows that you sympathize.
I'm a bit of a frustrated would-be lawyer.
Right. Okay. So it'd be interesting to hear. I do wish you would have brought him, because I would have been interested in sparring with him verbally, if he likes to play devil's advocate, because I would have probably had some fun with him as well. He would have probably had some fun with me, but I'd probably had some fun with him as well. So that would have been an interesting discussion if he'd have brought him. But obviously you have some issues with this case. You want to kind of talk about some of your main issues with say Brendan or Stephen?
Well, the thing that really got my hackles up was the press conference.
Right.
I think everybody who's interested knows how outrageous that was.
Yeah.
And how, if you've got any antennae to your personality at all, you can just see what's going on there. Right.
And how it completely colored the jury pool. It completely removed any chance of a fair trial, essentially, with that press conference.
It was a device to get to Stephen. Brendan was the sacrificial lamb.
Right.
The way things were looking, there wasn't really enough to get Stephen.
Right.
So go after Brendan.
Exactly. They knew their evidence was going to get questioned by Dean and Jerry. They knew that they were feeling insecure, I think is a good word for it.
Yeah. Something that wasn't part of this, but I was kind of shocked to hear that Jerry was involved in training.
Right.
Fassbender. But anyway, that's
he was on the Avery Commission, and they did write the things for investigators. So he wasn't. I don't know how hands-on Jerry was involved. I personally don't think he was. When I see Jerry's, bounding, support for Stephen and Brendan that I see on Twitter and Facebook and all the various places, I think Jerry might have been part of writing whatever it was that they wrote for these people, but I really don't think he was doing anything underhanded or anything like that. Just not me. I personally don't believe that. I know some people out there do, but I personally don't.
Anyway, that's by the way. But I mentioned to you earlier that I had some time in a small town, which is now quite a big town,
right.
But on the Queensland's Gold Coast, and I was aware that a couple of the school teachers there were dating cops and stuff, and it just gradually kept coming to mind that Manitowoc is also a small place, surprisingly small if you look at the aerial. Photo of it.
Right. And the actual city of it, right, is really kind of tiny.
And to me, it's obvious that Brendan had got through his years and years of schooling by guessing at what the teachers wanted, and what would avoid attracting attention, and what would stop other kids from bullying him, and all that sort of stuff. And I would love someone to look at the question of was there input sought from teachers by the police that helped to secure the
kind of off the record.
There's a very dodgy confession from Brendan, and if you're of like mind to Erekose and myself, you know how dodgy that was, and this control question just kind of cements the whole thing. But
they claim it's proof that he was resisting. They claim it's proof he's guilty, and it's proof of exactly the opposite of those things. But you guys will already talk about that enough.
So that's kind of my
Yeah, so your concern is, if I can try to kind of come at this in a different direction, your concern is that you think the cops may have been like behind, under the table, or below the board, were possibly going and talking to some of Brendan's teachers, or had maybe friendships with some of the teachers that Brendan had, and that there was something going on behind the scenes, some communication, so that these cops knew that Brendan was an easy target. I think that there's certainly something that I think is certainly worth looking into. I think it's certainly an interesting idea, and it certainly could be.
Well, particularly what Hugh was saying about the fact that, could it have been the fact that the teachers might have let slip, this lad has been guessing. You give him an exit, he'll take that.
Right. Yeah.
I think. Can you expand on that a bit more, Hugh?
Well, I think the way I put it, I was thinking about how I was going to put it, and I said, here's a kid who, after years and years, will do whatever it takes to try and guess at the door that's marked way out.
Yeah.
Right.
The easy answer, whatever option will keep him out of trouble, will avoid attracting attention, will keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
He has had a hell of a life,
mm-hmm.
and that's his way of getting through his day.
Exactly. He
was.
Yeah. Was Brendan a little bit overwhelmed when it came to real life stuff, especially like two grown men investigators, browbeating him for 3 hours? Was Brendan prepared for that sort of thing?
And even then, they can't play it fair because this control question and Judge Hamilton.
Yeah.
That
Hugh, I've never heard you swear until you mentioned Judge Hamilton.
Yeah, Judge Hamilton gets Hugh's ire up. So he gets my ire up too.
Yeah.
So Judge Hamilton, to me, it just boggles my mind how he could go ahead and regurgitate that Wisconsin crap about the control question. I mean, come on. If you're going to write a BS decision like you did in Brendan Dassey's on-bank review, how can you put that in? You're going to call it a fact. It's not a fact. It's a freaking travesty to even suggest that was Brendan resisting. Okay, what it shows is Brendan flip-flopping. Mm-hmm. Okay, flip-flopping is inconsistent. Remember Brendan asking, what does inconsistent mean? Folks,
oh, yeah.
That's what it comes down to. How much did Brendan really understand what was going on? How much could he have? And could he have really understood his Miranda rights in order to waive them? For me, those are some of the big questions when it comes to Brendan. So, obviously, Judge Hamilton is one bad. But what did you think about Judge Sykes, for instance? Do you notice that part when they were doing the oral arguments, and Judge Hamilton asks Laura Nyrider? He says, "Well, can you give us some examples of what law enforcement officers could do in the future differently?" And that sort of thing. And she's like, whoa, I'm not here to, that's not my thing. I'm not supposed to speak about that. That's not what we're here to decide, or whatever. And Judge Hamilton goes, oh yeah, I know. I just want to hear your suggestions, right? Baits are in, right? So Laura, obviously not wanting to disrespect the judges, obviously wanting to go ahead and answer because they're asking and they seem interested. So she begins to talk. And gets maybe 30, 45 seconds into what she's saying, and next thing you know, Judge Sykes, Wisconsin Supreme Court is where Judge Sykes came from, folks. Just a little tidbit of information for you. And then Judge Sykes starts jumping down Laura's throat, saying, that's not what we're here to decide. Well, no shit, Judge Sykes. Laura just fucking told you that. And it's just like, it's just bizarre when it comes to Brendan. How these things roll out, you know what I mean? So, what did you think of that particular part where they baited, Laura like that and then jumped on her?
I can't say I really registered.
You didn't really register that bit?
I don't know. I live in a house that is rife with distractions.
Okay, I can understand. But those of you who've watched the oral arguments at the on-bank review, I think some of you may know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's things like that. You know, I mean, everything around Brendan really is just not, there's nothing right about it. It's all just wonky.
Well, yeah.
The technical term, right?
That is the technical term. But remember we were talking earlier about the Miranda rights? You were talking about how you were saying something about that, which I would like to hear again, if you might.
I think I've already mentioned my dad. He was a Scottish lawyer from close to where Paul comes from.
North Berwick.
He gave up on the law after a few years because he found it was a bit too sordid. This was practicing in South Africa. But he stayed in the trust side of things, and he was interested, and I used to talk to him about various things such as innocent till proven guilty, and whether Al Capone was framed and so on. He had this phrase, legal fiction, and you know, I always think you've got to be so careful to remember that a lot of the principles of law are legal fictions, and the idea that people are aware of what they're doing when they are read their Miranda rights is just
even adults, right?
It's a joke for the majority of people, but it has to be that way. I mean, we're given some kind of warning, but unless you've been in a position where you've had a lawyer give you advice and tell you stuff like this, people are not prepared to do the appropriate thing, which is basically shut up, because the police, if they want to, they can
do whatever they want.
They can manipulate you. They can tell lies.
But you can't.
But you know, so we have this legal fiction, but how much more of an outrageous legal fiction is it when you apply it to a 16-year-old
with mentally
limited child with no parent or lawyer present?
Right, and then you go around like Fassbender and Wiegert saying stupid BS crap like, we gave Barb the opportunity to be there. No, you didn't. You waited until the day she was in freaking divorce court, you idiots.
They still, even with that, even in that situation, they are still prepared to lie and manipulate.
Exactly. They say she could have been there. She declined. She didn't decline. She was busy. She's doing something else. She had to be in court. You know, that's one of the things that just grinds my gears.
If anyone doesn't understand what we're talking about the control question and Judge Hamilton and all that sort of stuff, that's fertile ground to look at. See how you feel once you understand all that.
Right, exactly.
And the other thing is, just while you're in Australia, it seems to me Australians are pretty sensitized to the fact that police, judges, prosecutors are not perfect. We've been down this track.
Some American needs to start thinking about it.
We've had the Lindsay Chamberlain case that turned into the movie with Meryl Streep, Evil Angels.
The dingo ate my baby.
We've had royal commissions into our police in, I think, Queensland, that was the Fitzgerald, New South Wales, maybe the Ford, Victoria, Western Australia. All of them found endemic corruption. We've had a judge who was thrown out or resigned. I think he may have been a High Court judge because he wrote a letter saying that he shouldn't lose his license because his wife was driving when he was caught on a speeding, something like that. You know, we know these guys are just humans. When they're in Manitowoc and they've been running out of control for decades, you know, we look at it and we say, oh, we know what's going on here. This is just a festering nest of vipers, and Stephen Avery and the car yard and so on, they may not be the sort of business people like, but you know, innocent till proven guilty. Please, folks. Otherwise, you're not in a civilized country anymore.
Equality and justice for all, not just the privileged, not just the rich, not just, you know, right? Those are the principles that we're based on.
Yeah, you're the guys who invented this stuff.
Exactly. And we are the ones getting away from it. It's a shame. It's shameful, really, to be perfectly honest. Hopefully, with things like Making a Murder, Staircase, and on Saeed, you know, all these various documentaries that are coming out that are being really well done, these are things that are going to help people wake up. You know, these are going to help, these are things that are going to bring awareness, help people become aware of these problems in our criminal justice system. And I hope they continue. I mean, I hope we keep getting, you know, these really interesting documentaries about true crime, you know, because they are, you know, it's because, let's be honest about it. We're all here talking about it because we watched 1 or 2 or 3 of them, and we realized there were issues, and we're here talking about it now because of that.
And also what's interesting is the fact that, dare I say it, we're all of a slightly different generation, you know. Mm-hmm. You get lots of kids that are watching it now, youngsters. I mean, I've got a pupil, 15-year-old that's really interested in it. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Hugh and myself, you know, same sort of generation. We're older than you, dude.
Right.
You know, and if everybody can see that, it's you know, everybody, no matter how young or old you are, you can see exactly what sort of problems they've got.
Yeah. It's
in that so-called, well, I still refuse to call it a justice system.
Yeah.
I will never ever refer to Wisconsin as having a justice system. They do not have a justice system. They have a legal system that is completely corrupt.
Yeah, right. It's like Steve Moore said on my channel, folks. You guys, if you remember G-Man Steve Moore, when he was talking about that area of Wisconsin, he said it all starts with the judges. I mean, it's the judges. The judges allow DAs to get away with things that they shouldn't allow the DAs to get away with. Because the DAs realize they can get away with stuff, they start allowing law enforcement officers to get away with things that they shouldn't be doing. And it's like I've said this earlier today in my live, the prosecutor is the gatekeeper in our justice system to make sure justice is done. They have a very unique role. And a lot of prosecutors like Fallon Kratz, Sheila Ross in the Scott Davis case, you know, just these Jim prosecutors,
Jim
Harden in the Staircase. These people aren't doing the job that they're supposed to do as a prosecutor. They are taking liberties. They are bending rules. And these are things that make the state untrustworthy. To be honest, I'm the type of guy that I will tend to default to believing the state or the you know, whatever the DAs, you know, or whatever the prosecution, if I see that they're above board. But once I see evidence that they're not above board, that changes the entire equation. I can very easily start taking a negative attitude of the prosecution if they are doing shady crap like we see in this case and many others. And that was another thing you were talking about here about Australia, right? About Australians, that they have a different outlook here. Like your prison sentences aren't like that way, right? You don't have like life sentences and that sort of stuff.
Not unless it's a
really heinous thing, right?
Crime, and we're talking the most evil of evil stuff. You know?
Right, absolutely. Like the serial killer types, you know, those sort of things. Yeah, you don't want those people getting out and going, you know. Obviously those people have issues and they're not going to be able to stop, you know. And when you have, you know, serial killers or people like that are doing these heinous crimes, you don't want to let them back out. You don't want to let those people back out in the regular population so they can start killing again, right? Especially when they're, you know, especially the way that usually serial killers kill. I mean, it's usually very, very vulgar, very, very just bad. And so that's what I was, you know, getting at here in Australia. They have the attitude of, you know, innocent till proven guilty means something. You know, it's actually taken seriously. And it's a shame that in America we have kind of gotten away from that. And
people from the Anglophile part of the world will remember Rumpole of the Bailey if they're old enough. Yeah. I was telling these guys that was such a great show, because you actually had a lawyer who may have not known much about the law, but he knew about innocent till proven guilty, and these guys we're seeing in Wisconsin, they need to go back to school and think about what that means.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, any other questions, Mr. Capaldi?
Well, it was just what you were saying earlier about how, you know, all the way down from the DAs all the way down, you know, this is a problem, as Hugh quite rightly pointed out, and it's something that was you know, very interesting to me. Was, you know, what did Brendan's school teachers, what did they say to Brendan? How come they interviewed Brendan alone? Do these teachers not realise,
right,
that, you know, you've got police officers coming into a school asking to interview a pupil?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You would think that the teachers would know about.
Would have been somewhat protective, maybe.
Yes.
Or you would think possibly.
Have they fed him to the rules? I think it's what Hugh's saying, isn't it?
Or were some law enforcement officers in the area? Did they just have a friendship with some of the teachers, possibly, and that the teachers just casually talked about Brendan in a conversation one time? It may not have been purposeful. You know what I mean? It may have been that they were just friends with an officer and were just happened to be talking about Brendan, and that information got passed along to Wiegert and Fassbender. I mean, think about how long after everything Brendan's interrogation happens. You know,
months later,
they had been trying to bully Jody, and that didn't work out. She basically told them to go kick rocks, and then as soon as Jody basically turns them away, that's when they set their sights on Brendan. I mean, it's obvious. You can see the progression of events.
And why were they looking for a confession? Because they weren't getting anything out of Steve. Because he knows he's.
They had nothing solid.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, seriously. Laura Nyrider said this last night when she was talking about the way they tore apart Stephen's bedroom. I mean, the way that they went in there and tore it apart. Literally, I've been to the salvage yard, folks. I've looked in the windows of Stephen's bedroom, and I know the paneling's off the walls, folks. There's no paneling. They literally opened up all the walls looking for a trace of Teresa. They found nothing. Zero. Big old fat goose egg. You know, it's amazing that Wisconsin is able to continue to say, oh no, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. It's just like, no, there's plenty to see here. There's plenty wrong here. And acting as if there is nothing wrong, well, that just makes the whole area more questionable. It makes you the agents of Wisconsin. It makes you unbelievable. It makes you you're sacrificing your own credibility by ignoring what's obvious to all of us, to most of us. So I mean, that's what it comes down to in the end, really.
Across how many different continents?
Yeah, I mean, around the world now. Mm-hmm. People around the world are taking an interest in this, and you know, that was great. That's why I came to talk to you today. Obviously, it's great to talk with all supporters. Thank you for coming down and visiting with us today. But yeah, I mean, this is what we need to do. We need people to just continue to take an interest, to continue to talk about it, right? Just like Dean Strang said, how do we make the change? We talk about it. That's what we do.
Keep shining the light.
Keep shining the light. It's a good way to end it right there. Thank you. Thank you, Hugh.
You nailed it, Hugh.
Shine the light, people. That's what I'm talking about. Love it. That was a great conversation with Hugh Frazier. Hugh Frazier was absolute pleasure to talk to over there in Australia. One of the many high points of my trip. I mean, so many fun things, so many great things to say about Australia. The people were great, friendly people. Even outside the footy match, the ball went over some of the kids' heads and it came right to me. And so I asked, hey man, can I give this thing a kick? I'm from America. And as soon as I said that, they were like, oh yeah, go ahead. And so I kicked it. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, so you came here to watch the footy and this and that. And they're all, do you understand it? I said, yeah, I've been watching it the last few nights on TV and been watching it. I get how the game's played and what the whole idea is. Some of the penalties I'm not fully aware of yet. But some of them I think are obvious, just like football in my country. No tackling above the neck, yeah. we have a similar thing. No helmet to helmet and no face mask. So, you know, that sort of thing. So, you know, and I was just, and this kid and I were he was chatting, asking me about whatever and everything, real friendly. And it was like that a lot of places we went, just real super friendly people. Like when we met up with Adam Billis over at Federation Square, and then we walked down the river over to the convention center, Melbourne Convention Center. That was a lot of fun. Had a lot of good chat about the case there as we were walking. I mean, it was crowded and noisy and light because there was lots of stuff going on. There's like this little grassy knoll that runs along the river, and so there's a lot of action, lots of people, lots of just, you know, it's really, really cool. Awesome place to be on a Saturday night, I gotta say, and that's what it was. So it was a lot of fun. Really, really, really was a lot of fun, and just met so many great people. And Hugh Frazier is one of them. Adam Billis is another. I'm going to probably go ahead and try and get Adam Billis on a live at some point, because him and I and Mark and Paul, after we left the Melbourne Convention Center, we all went over to the Crown Casino food court, because you're able to just walk in, and the food court's the first thing before you ever go into the casino, because I didn't want to head into the casino. Anyways, I mean, I might have had fun in there, but I might have walked out a poor man, and I didn't want to do that. So, anyways, so we had in the food court. They had some killer food booths there. I ordered some Chinese food. It wasn't called Chinese, and it wasn't exactly like what we get here, but it was good. It was delicious. So, anyways, the chow mein was pretty much the same as we get here. I did enjoy the chow mein and stuff like that, but had to ask for the chopsticks, and because I like to eat Chinese food with chopsticks. Anyway, it's here nor there. So anyways, we sat and we had this chat while we were all eating dinner and stuff there with Adam, and Adam's really, really sharp about the case. Got a lot of really interesting input, a lot of interesting things to say, interesting ideas. So I'll hopefully get him on at some point. We're gonna have Tracy Keogh on here very soon. So that's another thing to look forward to. Just some of these brilliant, brilliant people from Australia, folks, that I had the fortunate, experience of meeting. And like I said, Hugh Frazier, who we just saw from, Carol Ann Fitzgerald, another one. As I just said, Adam Billis, Tracy Keogh, Melissa, Michelle, so many others that I'm, Penelope, Karen Gainey, Leanne, Jojo Mary, I don't know who I might have left out, but I mean, the whole trip is still a bit of a blur to me as I'm, processing it, being back home. So, but I hope I got most of the people there that I actually did get a chance to really have discussions with. And like I said, look forward to Tracy Keogh, in the near future. Look forward to hopefully Carol Ann Fitzgerald, pretty soon, and that sort of stuff. And I'm going to continue, talking about it, folks, because that's what I'm going to do here. And hopefully we can all continue to do that out on Twitter, out on Facebook, out on, whatever it is, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever else you do, whatever it is, keep creating the awareness, keep the conversation going, because it's up to us to stoke the fire that, documentaries like Making a Murderer, The Staircase, the Adnan Syed, various others documentaries that are showing that corruption exists, and there's inequities in the system, and they really need to be looked at and ironed out and figured out why they're happening, and so that they can be prevented. It's necessary, and it's not. It's a necessary process when you live in a free country. It requires constant vigilance to make sure that you maintain your freedoms. A lot of people think being free means you get to be lazy and not care. That's not what freedom means. Unfortunately, and I hate to break it to people that don't know this, being free means that you're willing to give something for that freedom. You are willing to give your all, your whatever it might be. You're like what I'm doing here, trying to speak out about a lot of these issues and stuff like that. That's the type of thing that people can do. making sure that you do the things like vote, and make sure you help out in your communities, and try to help out the general welfare of people around you. Not because you have to, but just because being generally helpful like that helps to make the human condition a little less burdensome. And that's what living in a free country really means. It means constant vigilance and constantly seeking to maintain the principles of freedom and the things that make it possible. And part of that is us taking more of an interest in our own societies, our own neighborhoods, our own cities, towns, counties, states, whatever, how you want to look at it. But it's up to us to do that. If we're not here to keep the people in power honest, corruption will continue to run rampant. So it all ultimately comes back to us, and we have to see our responsibility in the world. We have to notice that and see that in our own country. We need to notice that, because to maintain like I said, to maintain our freedom, we have to realize that some work goes into that. It's just a necessary thing. So I'm going to leave it at that. I do hope to get to talk to Hugh and his son in a live hangout at some point. I would really love to be able to, ask his son more questions and have a little discussion with Hugh and his son. So hopefully we might have that coming down the road. Anyways, I think I've covered a lot of stuff here, talked about a lot of different things, even maybe got off onto a little bit of a rant there for the folks that like that. Anyways, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.
Thank you.